The year was 1995, and first-person shooters invariably looked like this. Doom, now the ultimate Doom and sold at your local Kmart, was the cream of the crop, delivering high-octane action and adventure to the masses in numbers so extreme it was outselling Windows. But in the next year, a technological boom would hit the labyrinth-crawling, gun-toting genre in ways it couldn't comprehend, and we still feel today. 1996 saw the release of Duke Nukem 3D, which greatly expanded upon the 2.5D gameplay Doom had codified, but it also saw the launch of Quake, a fully 3D FPS. This was so incredibly groundbreaking, if maybe a little stale today, but this was a big deal at the time. Quake's environments weren't just floors at different levels. You could go up and down, you could make spiral staircases, you could explore the second, third, fourth floors of a building. And to really highlight just how impressive all this was, one of your first weapons in Quake was a grenade launcher, which tumbled pills all around, knocking against the walls, floors, ceilings, allowing you to shoot up into higher levels. This was all a big deal. And in 1997, it was almost child's play compared to Unreal, an expansive, massive game with sprawling maps, shiny specular surfaces, and a game engine so robust and designed to handle the action, we're still using it 23 years later. 1998's Half-Life added a sense of dread with its everyman protagonist and supporting fodder. And the moral decisions of getting to freely kill your coworkers but potentially locking yourself out of secrets or progression and thus having to keep them alive gave you a lot of room to be a chaotic scientist if you saw fit, but made you face the consequences of your actions. It's safe to say that each one of these games was more groundbreaking than the last, and many might argue that the best was yet to come, as 2001 saw the release of... I have the HD textures on, let me just... Okay, what button turns off the HD textures? Could someone help me? Halo Combat Evolved was just that. This was the next big game in the first-person shooter genre on Xbox. I didn't really know what the series even was until about 2008 or so because I was a literal Game Boy. Save for dabbling in Sega in the early 90s, how scandalous, my parents were Nintendo purists from my dad's NES in 1989 all the way through the Wii in 2006, and I took that torch with the acquisition of a Wii U and the purchase of a Nintendo Switch, both at launch. We didn't get any non-Nintendo console until 2005, and that was a PS1. We were a bit behind the curve. I didn't really know what a first-person shooter was until a friend showed me Call of Duty Black Ops in the 5th or 6th grade, and somehow that brings us here. But note that the Xbox was never part of the equation. Our first Microsoft game console was a 360 bought at a rummage sale in 2019 specifically to play Super Monkey Ball Deluxe. And with Microsoft's own shooting themselves in the foot by announcing Xbox titles be available also on Windows 10, we had no reason to buy a newer one. But one franchise eluded me despite that. One game series was just ever so out of reach all throughout its time in the cultural zeitgeist. I had never played a Halo title before. I had never seen a Halo title before, save for commercials and a brief cameo in a Simpsons episode. I'd never watched Red vs. Blue and didn't really know what it was until my second or third year of high school. I never knew any friends with an Xbox and Halo, and Dan, I swear to gosh, if you've been hiding Halo from me this entire time, I will cry. And that brings us to March 2019, when Microsoft announced that the Halo Master Chief Collection would be coming to PC. I had conflicting feelings at the time. On one hand, I'd get to try out a game people kept sticking to most influential games lists all for myself. But on the other hand, Halo seemed kind of over, at least as a fad. It had originally ended with the release of Halo 3. Bungie had told the story they wanted to tell and were gearing up for a next-gen spiritual successor. Microsoft, who owned the Halo license, created a game studio specifically designed to churn out more Halo games, and their quality would be questionable at best or disappointing at worst, with some egregious gameplay changes making fans nostalgic for the original trilogy. So it was then and there that I'd created my plan. I was going to play my way through the games in launch order and witness the series' rise and fall, what it brought to the FPS genre, and they're not porting them in launch order. Yeah, Halo Reach is a prequel, so it got remade first. They're being made in chronological order as opposed to launch order. This title is one of the newer ones, so this would be a bit like starting Back to the Future at the third film. It's set before the other two, technically, but we're missing how things developed and grew over time. Okay, there we are. And after a painful setup phase involving installing the first game because Steam defaulted to reach as multiplayer only for some reason, we were ready to witness the finest 2001 had to offer. The technological leap present in Halo is astonishing. Models are very clean and detailed, animations are smooth, this cutscene is stuck in the HD texture mode. You can't fix that, I don't think. Okay, there's the chunk. That's what I'm looking for. Halo 1 and 2 in the collection allow switching between the HD remakes graphics and the originals on the fly, unless you're in a cutscene, and the end result is that the game is definitely going to eat more resources than a 2001 shooter should, I think, but we have to play like we're back in the 6th gen. I don't mind some chunky polygons. I played Half-Life 1 how Mr. Coomer wanted me to play it. Don't splurge on me. It's alright. My initial reaction is it's alright. The combat feels decent enough, the set and enemy design is tolerable, the music exists. And the weapons for 2001 feel pretty good. The pistol's pretty punchy, and the assault rifle is an FN 2000 without a New York minute to spare, vomiting up 7.62 by 51mm NATO cartridges with all of the finesse and grace of a fire hose pointed at a tissue paper factory. Its accuracy, though, much like the opinions surrounding its real-world counterpart for one Mr. Anton Hand, is not wonderful. This is a close-range weapon. Put it up against your opponent and pull the trigger. Don't try to snipe with it. You have the pistol for that, I think. Halo Combat Evolved is credited with many literal game-changing mechanics that codified how first-person shooters played and were designed. The very first one that rears its head in the campaign is John Halo's regenerating shields. When the Chief's getting beat up, rather than scouring for armor in the map, you instead simply bunker down out of sight until it fills back up. Many sources improperly cite Halo as having regenerating health, which isn't quite true as you do need to scope out medkits to actually heal. But if you don't let your shields break, you don't ever need to grab a medkit. Additionally, Halo also popularized having a dedicated key to throw a grenade. In previous FPSes, grenades were typically counted as a weapon in your arsenal. You had to select your grenades and fire them off like they were another gun. Here, it's just one button press no matter what you're doing to chuck a grenade. And I'll give him this. It's smart. I really like the grenade button. In both cases, I can't figure out if they were the first FPS to do this, but even if they aren't, Halo sold 8 million copies on the original Xbox and undoubtedly has doubled its money since. And history is written by the winners, so Halo gets credited for inventing both. But after seeing both of these in 2001, especially the grenade hotkey, I hope you better understand where some of the upset Half-Life 2 faced for having grenades continue to be a weapon slot 3 years later comes from. I remember thinking it wasn't that big of a deal when I first played the Orange Box and read some older reviews, but after using a grenade hotkey in a relatively retro title, I understand why people feel Half-Life 2 was a bit dated in its design. But come on, Halo can't do this. The third thing Halo brought to FPSs on its trip into the mainstream was a limited arsenal. In Half-Life, Doom, whatever, you carried all your gear around at any one time, and in a title like Half-Life Opposing Force, you might be carrying 17 weapons all at once, including a bulky M40A1 sniper rifle, an M249 machine gun, a SPAS-12, an MP5 SD, and all sorts of weird sciencey gizmos and gadgets. Now, here you get 2 weapons at a time, and you have to swap between them and drop equipment constantly as your ammo supplies are rather low, or weapons just shoot a lot of ammo very quickly. Whether this is good or not for FPSs could be debated for hours, not unlike the weapon durability in Breath of the Wild, but many feel like Halo does it better because each weapon is a bit different and all pretty unique and powerful. For instance, if I hold E to grab this dropped... Okay, any minute now, this... Just you hold E to... You hold E to... Okay, so it's worth mentioning that Halo 1 and 2 both got PC ports back in the day, with Halo 1's spearheaded by Gearbox in 2003. This bug was not in that old PC release. It's not in the Xbox release of Halo. Any Xbox release of Halo. It's caused by the game running at a frame rate that isn't exactly 60. For whatever reason, it doesn't like that, and it doesn't register E being held. And in some cases, it causes double inputs, namely when trying to use the zoom toggle on the pistol. It's a glitchy, flickery mess. Also, because the Anniversary Edition is running essentially 2 versions of each model at the same time, it's actually running 2 game engines at the same time. There's the Halo Classic game engine and a new engine written by 343 running under the hood. That's what facilitates the modern classic graphics toggle so seamlessly. There were inputs getting eaten or doubled, and all in all, it wasn't feeling good on my first play session. I was running the game in a borderless window at an uncapped frame rate, and it played terribly. In general, it felt less like one of the most influential games of all time and more like a hasty, shoddy recreation. Luckily, running the game in a window at 60 Hz fixes those issues, so I guess there's that. But now I can have fun with Halo. It's so fun. Oh, I'm having so much fun playing Halo, you know? Okay, so I get it. This game is from 2001. I can't be expecting Arc Complex quality level design, but Half-Life 1 is my entire argument. Office Complex, questionable ethics, and for as much as it kinda sucks, surface tension. That's my argument. Here's the issue. These levels are all very diverse, tight and confined, with plenty to do, and I get through them quick without a ton of backtracking. When I do need to backtrack, at least things change around me. Enemies aren't bullet sponges, and the plot evolves around the player as they progress without having to jam them into unskippable cutscenes. I can listen in on the radio and hear about what the HECU is doing next. Or I could sod off and whack the roaches, and if I miss something vital in doing so, that's my loss. This was 3 years prior. In Halo, most maps are made up of big, boxy rooms with tons of enemies flooding in, and tiny hallways separating them. So as a result, the level design in Halo feels like... it feels like monkey nuts. Fun fact, that was actually a working title for Halo. Monkey nuts. What is going on? Hello? Another issue I have with the level design actually isn't even an issue with the level design, it's an issue with the game design. Because they really want to take advantage of regenerating shields, most encounters are designed with the ideology that you walk into them at full power and duck away to regen before dropping in full steam ahead once again. That'd be all fine and dandy, except enemies are bullet sponges, and often deal an insane amount of damage. I'm playing on normal, and the yellow enemies with the beam swords can one-shot me no matter my health or armor. Enemies can often tear my shields to pieces in a couple blows, and what power-ups I do find are never in really any situation where I can make them work well. A segment in level 5 took me nearly 45 minutes to cross through because enemies had flying Banshee vehicles that could shred my armor. My pistol was low on ammo, so I couldn't fight all those guys with reflecting shields and tough armor, and relying on item drops across the bridge was entirely dependent on luck, hoping they didn't slide off into the forest below. My only other weapon was a rocket launcher and a plasma pistol. There were only like 4 rockets left in the rocket launcher, and the plasma pistol fires projectiles that are so slow the enemies can walk around them. In between segments like this were massive arenas that were all entirely identical, with the only verticality being narrow hallways leading down into more identical rooms. But in these levels, no matter what, health is scarce, and the idea is that you use cover as a means to ensure your shields stay up and your health stays full. But 1, that slows down the game to a crawl as you're always being battered and spending upwards of 5 to 10 seconds waiting, and 2, trying to rush will end with you killed, which makes the game on the whole feel criminally slow. Even if it's just 10 levels, about 15 minutes each, if you follow par times, it should only take you like 5 hours. But it doesn't. So I'm John Halo. I was on a ship with a bunch of guys, and a bunch of guys, the Covenant, invade and shoot my guys, and we crash land on... Say, what's the name of the onion ring planet that's so thin its own gravity should crumple it like tinfoil?
It's Halo.
Yeah, that's the name of the game.
The planet is Halo.
But what was the name of the planet?
The planet's called Halo.
Okay, but yeah, that's the game name. What was the planet called? Halo is more than just a planet as wide and long as Route 66 rolled up into the world's dumbest game of ring toss. It's also an ancient superweapon capable of wiping out humanity. The Covenant, an equal opportunity employer servicing all kinds of alien creatures, are looking to eliminate the human race by using the Halo. And John Halo and his Halo friends in this Halo game have to stop them from using Halo to make sure Halo 2 doesn't happen. You're not alone in this mission, even outside of the squad mates that spawn in during the maps. You're assisted by a digital hacker with an obscene amount of Y2K aesthetic, Cortana. Man, I wonder where they came up with that name. Actually, the Windows 10 digital assistant is named after the Halo character, not the other way around. I don't think it's the same voice. But yeah, you're fighting to keep a death ring from falling into alien hands. It's simple, it works, and for once it's not copying the "our teleporter experiment went wrong" plot that so many other games were using. Visually, for 2001, it's alright. The environments are a bit too open and architecturally aren't really interesting or have really recognizable design language, but the outdoor scenes look really solid for an early 6th gen game, and skyboxes work pretty well. The port doesn't feature much that distinctive, "ooh, someone messed up," graphical jank like you'd find in Half-Life Source or Sonic Adventure DX. Transparency and specular effects look to be working correctly. Animations are about what you'd expect for the start of the new millennium. I mean, there's of course better looking games even for 2001, things like Luigi's Mansion stand out the most, but it doesn't really look like an N64 or PS1 game either. Of course, there is a chance I'm actually looking at upscaled graphics or improved models just made to look like the 2001 title, and I wouldn't know otherwise. Speaking of improved models, I might as well comment on the Anniversary Edition visual upgrade. It doesn't look as good in my opinion. Not that it's poorly done or whatever, but there's something a lot more special, a lot more impactful in seeing behind the curtain and looking at how Bungie assembled this game's visual style circa 2001. Being able to see where the skybox begins and ends, being able to look at the slight differences in the various technologies around me. The modern visuals kind of steamroll everything together into this single visual style. All of the sci-fi areas look the same. All of the natural environments look the same. It doesn't feel as good. It's technically and objectively a better looking title with the Anniversary Edition visual upgrade, but much like being able to see the fishing lines in old movies holding up flying props, I feel like the retro aesthetic just looks cooler. It really sells that this is a game from 2001. I like seeing those strings and wires. It's all the more endearing. It really cements just how far we've come in the past 2 decades. I wouldn't go as far as to call the new visual style revisionist. Visually, the game is charming. It's dated to hell and back, but some of my favorite games are even older, so I can tolerate pretty much all of its jank. It looks good, it plays alright, but the level design... I can't stress this enough, the levels are terrible. They're a bit bland and repetitive at best, and downright boring and frustrating at worst, but that's mostly just Doom 2, Blue Shift, Quake. Early FPSes had these sorts of issues, and we've forgiven them. Halo, likewise, was trying to set new trends in gaming. Mechanically, environmentally, cinematically. Halo was unlike anything else that came out at its time and really proved that Bungie could keep up with the biggest names in the genre. Of course things aren't going to be as good as others. That's all part of developing a video game. You have a time crunch, you have resources, a budget. And they picked to make the game a cinematic experience. And I think it worked. My final verdict is that Halo Combat Evolved isn't perfect. It doesn't hold up as a staple of the genre today. There's 20 years of evolution that have happened since. But that makes this a perfect sort of historical piece. Any fan of first-person shooters doing research into the genre's history, an FPS developer looking for mechanics and features integral to the experience, anyone with even a shred of interest in the genre and its evolution should play a bit of Halo Combat Evolved within the context it came out in. It was 2001. We were just getting into the 6th generation of gaming. The CD, which had just become the king of game storage half a decade prior, was quickly getting eclipsed by new DVD technology, and the advancements Halo popularized are still felt today. You don't need to play through the whole game to understand that it was a monumental moment for FPS history. Call of Duty still uses a regenerating health system. The newest games in the FPS genre haven't found a way to one-up the dedicated grenade button, and the idea of telling a cinematic, full-fledged story with FPSes has grown far beyond where it was just a couple years prior. It's not just a scientist telling you what you're doing next. It can be a borderline movie quality experience. This wasn't a fantastic way to start getting into the Halo series, but it was an integral detour on my way through first-person shooter history. I can safely say I'm interested to see how Halo 2 pushes the boundaries to what the first game set out to do. I guess we'll find out soon enough. Until then, though, I cannot thank you enough for watching, and I hope to see you around. If you like this video and you'd like to see more, I'd recommend subscribing. Patreon and social media links are in the description.